So picture this. It's the dawn of the 21st century, and the United States is, without a doubt, the world's only superpower. But with all that power comes a really fundamental choice, and the legendary statesman Henry Kissinger, he framed it just perfectly. Would America act like an emperor, just imposing its will on everyone? Or would it be a leader, building consensus? Let's dive into Kissinger's analysis of a choice that would pretty much define an era.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we're going to look at the absolutely unique position of power America was in. Then we'll get into the heart of it, this core choice between being an emperor or a leader. We'll see how this actually played out in the super-critical US-Europe relationship, looking at the cracks that were starting to show and the big questions around NATO's future. And then finally, we'll zoom back out and see what all these choices really mean for the world.
Okay, let's set the scene. The year is 2001. The Cold War is in the rearview mirror, and American influence is just off the charts. Kissinger argued that this wasn't just another powerful country. No, this was something the world had literally never seen before.
And the sheer scope of this power was kind of staggering. I mean, Kissinger wasn't just talking about military might, not by a long shot. He was pointing to America's huge advantage in technology, its economic powerhouse status, and the global reach of its culture. From science to movies, American influence was just everywhere, making it, in his opinion, even more powerful than the Roman Empire.
But look, having all that power is one thing. Deciding how you're going to use it, that's a whole different ballgame. And this brings us right to the absolute heart of Kissinger's whole argument. This massive dilemma facing the United States. And this really says it all, doesn't it? What you're seeing here is actually from the Farsi edition of his book, which just goes to show you how globally relevant this question was. This isn't just a catchy title, it's a blueprint for foreign policy. Does America go it alone, just run in with its own ideas, or does it work with others, leading a team of nations? The answer was going to shape its relationship with every single country on Earth. So let's really break these two paths down. Okay, on one side, you've got the emperor. This is all about going it alone, using your immense power to make others do what you want, to adopt your values. The main goal? Dominance. But then you have the path of the leader. This is all about building a team, It's about persuasion, cooperation, and putting partnership ahead of dominance. At the end of the day, one path risks leaving you all alone, while the other, well, that one requires you to compromise. Now to see how this choice plays out in the real world, Kissinger doesn't try to look at the whole globe at once. Nope, he zooms in on America's most important, most historic partnership, the Atlantic Alliance with Europe. I mean, think about it. For over 50 years, this alliance had been the absolute bedrock of American foreign policy. So for Kissinger, the health of this relationship was the ultimate litmus test. The way America handled its partnership with its closest friends would show everyone whether it was leaning towards being an emperor or a leader. And when Kissinger looked really closely at that relationship back in 2001, he saw signs of trouble. That old unity, the thing that held everyone together during the Cold War, was starting to wear thin, and new problems were popping up all over the place. The history of the alliance really puts this all into perspective. After World War II, it was built around one massive common threat, the Soviet Union. Sure, there were bumps in the road like the Suez Crisis in '56, but for decades, the Cold War was like a powerful glue holding them together. But after 1991, with the USSR gone, poof! That glue just dissolved, and the cracks really started to show. And hey, we're not talking about some abstract philosophical disagreements here. This was real-world stuff. We're talking about actual trade wars over things like beef and bananas, constant arguments over who should pay for what when it came to defense. The US and Europe had completely different ideas about how to handle the new Russia, and they were butting heads over the importance of international courts and treaties. The partnership was being seriously tested. And nowhere was this test more obvious than inside NATO, the very heart of the Atlantic Alliance. I mean, its original job, defending Europe from a Soviet invasion, was gone. So NATO was left asking itself a huge question. What are we even for now? And to make things even more complicated, you had Europe starting to flex its own muscles. In 1998, they created this thing called the European Security and Defense Policy. The goal was basically to be able to handle military situations on their own, without always needing the US. This was a huge signal that Europe wasn't just going to follow America's lead anymore, a clear pushback against that emperor dynamic. At the very same time, the Clinton administration was pushing really hard for NATO to expand to the east. The official thinking was basically four things. 1. To deal with new threats. 2.
to lock in all the new democracies in Eastern Europe. 3, to welcome countries that wanted to join the West. And 4, to finally get rid of that old Iron Curtain dividing line for good.
But this whole expansion thing, it brought up a massive question, one that people are still debating today. If you add a bunch of new members with totally different histories and security worries, does that make your alliance stronger? Or does it just water it down and make it way harder for everyone to agree on anything?
So how does this all connect to the bigger picture? Well, all these arguments and tensions between the US and Europe, they weren't just about Europe. They were a perfect example of the fundamental choice America was facing everywhere else in the world too.
At the end of the day, America's incredible power created a brand new global reality. It didn't just force the US to make tough choices, it forced everyone, allies and rivals alike, to figure out how to deal with this one, single, incredibly dominant nation.
And it really all comes back to this one big trade-off. Acting like an emperor, going it alone, calling all the shots, might seem quick and easy, but you risk pushing away the very friends you need. Acting like a leader, building a team, sharing the decisions, keeps those friendships strong. But it means you got to have patience, you got to negotiate, and you have to accept that you're not always going to get 100% of what you want.
So, Kissinger laid out this fundamental choice way back at the very beginning of the century. And now, here we are over 20 years later. Through all the shifting global challenges and all the different presidents, it's a question we have to ask ourselves. Has America actually made a choice between these two paths? Or is it still bouncing back and forth, trying to figure out its role in the 21st century?